The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. Nobody at the rooftop engagement party noticed it was Brooklyn's hand that dropped it. They were too busy cheering. Too busy watching the ring sparkle under the golden California sunset. Too busy celebrating the moment that had just destroyed her life. Brooklyn Carter stood frozen near the glass railing of the downtown Los Angeles rooftop bar, the city stretching endlessly below her like a glowing ocean of headlights and skyscrapers. Her best friend, Madison Clark, was laughing, holding up her hand so everyone could admire the diamond ring. And the man who had just proposed. Brooklyn's boyfriend of 6 years. Ethan Hayes. Brooklyn felt her stomach twist. Not twist. Collapse. The sound of traffic from Sunset Boulevard floated up 20 floors below. Music pulsed from the speakers behind her. Someone yelled, "Holy crap, that ring is huge." Brooklyn blinked slowly. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe this wasn't real. But then Ethan wrapped his arm around Madison's waist and kissed her cheek. And Madison said the words that echoed like gunshots in Brooklyn's skull. "Oh my God, babe, I can't believe we're engaged." Brooklyn's breathing stopped. Engaged. The word felt like broken glass in her lungs. She stared at them. Her boyfriend. Her best friend. Standing in the center of the party. Holding each other like Brooklyn had never existed. Her fingers trembled. 6 years. Years. Late-night tacos on Venice Beach. Road trips down Highway 1. The tiny apartment they shared in Santa Monica where Ethan used to cook Sunday pancakes. The promise ring he gave her 3 years ago. "You're my forever, Brooke," he had whispered. Her forever was now kissing someone else. Her best friend. Brooklyn felt the world tilt. "Brooklyn!" A voice behind her. She turned slowly. Jason Morales stood there holding 2 drinks. Jason. Madison's older brother. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black leather jacket despite the warm California evening. His dark eyes were fixed on Brooklyn's face. Concern. Confusion. "Hey," he said carefully. "You good?" Brooklyn opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Jason followed her gaze toward the crowd. Toward Ethan and Madison. And then realization hit his face like a train. "Oh shit." Brooklyn swallowed. "Yeah," she whispered hoarsely. Jason looked furious. "Wait, they didn't tell you." Brooklyn let out a small laugh. Sounded broken. "Tell me what?" Jason cursed under his breath. "Oh hell no." Brooklyn forced herself to keep looking. Keep breathing. Because if she looked away now, she might collapse. The party kept roaring around them. Music. Laughter. Champagne popping. Madison suddenly grabbed a microphone from the DJ booth. Okay, everyone chill for a second," she squealed. The crowd quieted. Brooklyn felt her heart pound violently in her chest. Madison beamed. "So, as you guys know, Ethan and I have been together for about 8 months now." Brooklyn's ears rang. Months. Month. Her knees nearly buckled. Ethan wrapped an arm around Madison proudly. "And tonight," Madison continued, her voice trembling with excitement, "he asked me to marry him." The crowd erupted. Ears. Clapping. Someone shouted, "Let's go." Brooklyn tasted blood. She had bitten the inside of her lip without realizing. Jason leaned closer. "Brooklyn," he murmured. Did he break up with you?" Brooklyn stared straight ahead. "No." Jason's jaw tightened. "Are you serious?" She nodded faintly. Her voice barely existed. "I thought he was in San Diego on a business trip." Jason looked like he might punch someone. Madison kept talking. "I just want to thank my best friend Brooklyn," she said suddenly. Brooklyn's head snapped up. The entire party turned toward her. Spotlight. Whispers. Madison smiled brightly. "Brooklyn's basically my sister. She's been there for me through everything." Brooklyn felt her hands go numb. Madison continued, completely oblivious. She always told me I deserved the perfect guy. And guess what? I found him. Madison leaned into Ethan. Brooklyn saw the way Ethan avoided her eyes. Coward, Jason muttered. Unbelievable. Madison raised her glass. To friendship, to love, and to forever. Everyone lifted their drinks. Except Brooklyn. Madison finally noticed. Brooklyn. Girl, come here. The crowd parted. Brooklyn didn't move. Madison waved excitedly. Come on. Get up here. Jason whispered urgently. You don't have to go. But Brooklyn stepped forward. Slowly. Each step felt like walking through wet cement. People stared. Some smiling. Some confused. 'Cause they knew. Everyone here knew. Except Brooklyn. Madison pulled her into a hug. Brooke. Oh my God, you're shaking. Brooklyn stood stiffly in her arms. Madison smelled like vanilla perfume. The same one Brooklyn had bought her for her birthday. Ethan stood 2 feet away. Looking guilty. Brooklyn finally looked at him. His eyes dropped instantly. Coward. Madison held Brooklyn's shoulders. Isn't this insane? She squealed. I'm getting married. Brooklyn forced a smile. Yeah, she said quietly. Insane. Madison beamed. I mean, you always said Ethan was a great guy. Brooklyn stared at her. Always said. Past tense. Madison tilted her head. You okay? Brooklyn studied her face. Trying to see the friend she had known for 12 years. Sleepovers. College. Breakup. Secrets. But suddenly, Madison looked like a stranger. Brooklyn turned toward Ethan. Finally. Directly. Congratulations, she said. Ethan opened his mouth. Brooke. She raised a hand. Don't. The crowd went silent. Madison looked confused. Wait, what's going on? Brooklyn felt the rage rising in her chest like a volcano. But she swallowed it. Not here. Not tonight. She looked at Madison. Nothing, Brooklyn said softly. Madison frowned. You're acting weird. Brooklyn let out a breath. Then she said the sentence that made half the party gasp. Madison. How long did you say you've been dating Ethan? Madison blinked. 8 months. Brooklyn nodded slowly. Cool. She turned to Ethan. And when exactly were you planning to tell me? Dead silence. Madison's smile faded. Tell you what. Ethan looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. Brooklyn. I was going to explain. Brooklyn laughed. Loud. Sharp. Explain what? That you were cheating on me with my best friend. The party exploded into whispers. Madison's eyes widened. Wait, what? Brooklyn looked at her. Cold. You didn't know. Madison looked between them. Know what? Brooklyn folded her arms. Ethan and I never broke up. Madison's face drained of color. Ethan finally spoke. Brooklyn. 6 years, Brooklyn interrupted. She looked directly at Madison. We've been together 6 years. Madison staggered back like she'd been slapped. Ethan, tell me that's not true. Ethan stayed silent. That was the answer. Madison's breathing became shaky. You told me you broke up last year. Brooklyn tilted her head. Oh wow. Her voice was ice. So he lied to both of us. Jason stepped forward. Okay, that's enough. Everyone back up. But the damage was already done. Madison looked at Ethan like she didn't recognize him. You said she was just your ex. Ethan rubbed his face. I was going to tell you both. Brooklyn shook her head. No, you weren't. He turned away. Jason grabbed her arm gently. Brooklyn. Her eyes burned. But she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. She pulled her arm free. Enjoy the party, she said quietly. Then she walked toward the elevator. Behind her, chaos exploded. Madison shouting. Ethan trying to explain. Guests whispering. The elevator doors closed. Brooklyn finally exhaled. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls. Strong. Composed. But inside, something had broken. The elevator dinged at the lobby. Brooklyn stepped outside into the warm Los Angeles night. The air smelled like street tacos and car exhaust. Traffic roared. Life continued. Like nothing had happened. She walked down the sidewalk in silence. Jason suddenly appeared beside her. "I'm driving you home." Brooklyn shook her head. "No. Yes. I'm fine." "Brooklyn," he said firmly. "You're not fine." She stopped walking. For the first time that night, her voice cracked. "I wasted 6 years." Jason's expression softened. "No," he said quietly. "You survived 6 years with the wrong guy." Brooklyn laughed bitterly. "And my best friend." Jason leaned against a parked car. Madison didn't know. Brooklyn stared at the streetlights. "I know." Silence. Then she said something that surprised even herself. "They deserve each other." Jason studied her carefully. "You mean that?" Brooklyn's eyes hardened. "No." She looked up at the glowing skyline. And whispered. "But they're going to wish they never met me." Jason raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." Brooklyn finally smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that started wars. "Jason," she said calmly. "You want to help me ruin a wedding?" Jason stared at her. Slowly. A grin spread across his face. "Oh hell yeah." But at that exact moment, Brooklyn's phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. She opened it, and her blood ran cold. Text message. "Brooklyn. There's something you need to know about Madison. She's not who you think she is." Brooklyn frowned. Another message appeared. "If you knew what she did to you, you'd hate her more than you hate me." Brooklyn's heart started pounding. She looked up at Jason. "Something's wrong." Jason frowned. "What?" Brooklyn slowly turned the phone toward him. Jason read the message. His expression darkened instantly. "Brooklyn." "What?" Jason looked at her like he had just realized something terrifying. "Madison isn't the one you should be worried about." Brooklyn's stomach dropped. "Then who is?" Jason took a deep breath. And said the one name Brooklyn never expected to hear. "Your father." Brooklyn froze. Her father had been dead for 10 years. The street lights flickered above them. And suddenly, nothing about this night made sense anymore. Brooklyn stared at Jason like he had just spoken a different language. "My father," she repeated slowly. The late-night Los Angeles traffic roared past them, headlights slicing through the humid California air. A distant police siren wailed somewhere toward Hollywood Boulevard. Jason looked uneasy. The confident grin he'd had seconds ago was gone. Brooklyn crossed her arms tightly. "My dad died 10 years ago," she said flatly. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah. That's what everyone thinks." Brooklyn felt irritation flare through her shock. "What the hell does that mean?" Jason glanced around the street like he expected someone to be listening. "Look. Maybe Ethan shouldn't have texted you like that." Brooklyn's patience snapped. "You don't get to drop a bomb like that and then go silent," she said sharply. "Explain." Jason sighed. "You remember when Madison's dad, my dad, started his real estate empire?" Brooklyn nodded. Everyone in Los Angeles knew the Morales name. Luxury developments, high-rise condos, massive projects stretching from Santa Monica to downtown LA. "Yeah," Brooklyn said slowly. "He started expanding around 2015. Jason nodded. "That expansion happened because he got funding." "Okay." Jason hesitated. "Funding from a silent partner." Brooklyn frowned. "And?" Jason met her eyes. That partner was your father. Brooklyn's stomach dropped. That's impossible. Jason shook his head. It's not. Brooklyn laughed nervously. My dad was a firefighter, Jason. Jason said quietly. That's what you were told. The words landed like a punch to the chest. Brooklyn felt the air leave her lungs. No, she whispered. Jason pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward her. An old photograph. Two men standing in front of a half-constructed building. One of them was definitely Jason's father. The other man. Brooklyn's heart skipped. Her father. Younger. Wearing a suit instead of a firefighter uniform. Brooklyn's hands began to shake. Where did you get this? Jason shrugged. Family archives. Brooklyn stared at the photo. Her father had always come home smelling like smoke and ash. His hands rough. His face tired. He used to fall asleep watching baseball games on the couch. He wasn't a businessman. He couldn't be. Jason watched her carefully. There's more. Brooklyn looked up slowly. What? Jason exhaled. Your dad didn't die in a house fire. Brooklyn's chest tightened. That's exactly how he died. Jason shook his head. No. Silence stretched between them. Brooklyn's voice came out barely above a whisper. Then how did he die? Jason hesitated. Officially. Brooklyn's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, officially? Jason leaned against the car again. Officially, it was a tragic fire during a rescue attempt. Brooklyn nodded slowly. Yes. Jason looked uncomfortable. But behind closed doors. People say it wasn't an accident. Brooklyn felt ice crawl up her spine. People. Jason hesitated again. My dad. Some of his business partners. Brooklyn's heart pounded. What are they saying? Jason took a breath. They say your father was about to expose something. Brooklyn's pulse roared in her ears. Expose what? Jason's eyes darkened. A massive financial scam tied to our development company. Brooklyn blinked. No. Jason nodded grimly. And 3 days before he could go public. He paused. Brooklyn finished the sentence for him. He died. Jason didn't answer. That was answer enough. Brooklyn staggered back a step. The city lights blurred around her. You're saying my father was murdered? Jason raised his hands. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Brooklyn's breathing grew uneven. For 10 years she had mourned a tragic accident. For 10 years she believed her father died a hero. But now, a new possibility was creeping in. Terrifying one. Jason spoke carefully. Look, Ethan probably texted you because he knows some of this. Brooklyn snapped her head up. How would Ethan know anything about my father? Jason hesitated. Brooklyn narrowed her eyes. You're hiding something. Jason sighed. Ethan works for my dad's company now. Brooklyn froze. What? Jason nodded. He's been there almost a year. Brooklyn's mind raced. Months. Madison said she had been dating Ethan for 8 months. Ethan had been working for Jason's father for a year. Brooklyn suddenly felt like puzzle pieces were clicking into place. Pieces she didn't want to see. She whispered. Madison didn't just randomly meet Ethan. Jason stayed silent. Brooklyn's voice grew sharper. She met him through your dad's company. Jason looked away. Yeah. Brooklyn laughed bitterly. So my boyfriend starts working for your dad. Meets your sister, cheats on me, and suddenly gets engaged. Jason winced. When you say it like that it sounds bad. Brooklyn glared. It sounds bad because it is bad. Jason ran a hand through his hair. Look, I don't think Madison knew about you. Brooklyn's jaw clenched. That doesn't make this better. Jason nodded slowly. Fair. Brooklyn looked down at her phone again. Ethan's message still glowed on the screen. She's not who you think she is. Brooklyn frowned. Why would Ethan warn me about Madison? Jason shrugged. Maybe guilt. Brooklyn shook her head. No. Ethan doesn't suddenly grow a conscience. Jason smirked faintly. True. Brooklyn stared at the skyline. Something felt off. Very off. Jason. Yeah. If Ethan works for your dad. And Madison is your sister. Jason nodded. And. Brooklyn's voice dropped. Then this engagement isn't random. Jason's expression changed. You think it's connected to the business? Brooklyn nodded slowly. I think it might be connected to my father. Jason let out a low whistle. That's a hell of a theory. Brooklyn turned toward him. Jason. Did your dad ever talk about mine? Jason hesitated. Once. Brooklyn's heart skipped. What did he say? Jason's jaw tightened. He said your dad almost destroyed everything. Brooklyn felt a chill. And. Jason's voice dropped. He said some people are better off dead. The words echoed in the quiet street. Brooklyn's hands curled into fists. Her entire life suddenly felt like a lie. Her father. Her relationship. Her best friend. Everything was tangled in something darker. Jason studied her carefully. You okay? Brooklyn nodded slowly. But inside, a storm was forming. Cold. Calculated storm. She looked at Jason. You said earlier you'd help me ruin a wedding. Jason smirked. I did. Brooklyn's eyes hardened. I'm still planning to do that. Jason crossed his arms. But. Brooklyn lifted her phone. But now I want answers first. Jason nodded. Fair. Brooklyn started walking again. Where are you going? Jason asked. To see Ethan. Jason blinked. Tonight. Brooklyn didn't slow down. Yes. Jason jogged after her. That might be a bad idea. Brooklyn stopped beside her car. Unlocked it. Opened the door. Jason leaned against the hood. Brooklyn. She looked at him. You really think Ethan's just going to spill everything? Brooklyn slid into the driver's seat. No. Jason raised an eyebrow. Then what's the plan? Brooklyn started the engine. The dashboard lights illuminated her face. Focused. Dangerous. My plan, she said quietly, is to remind Ethan exactly who he betrayed. Jason grinned slowly. Oh, this I gotta see. Brooklyn pulled onto the street. Los Angeles stretched endlessly ahead. Neon lights, palm trees, endless highways. Somewhere in this city, the truth about her father was hiding. And somehow, her best friend's wedding was connected to it. Jason glanced at her as they drove. You know, he said casually, this might get messy. Brooklyn's lips curved slightly. Good. Jason laughed. Damn, Brooklyn. Remind me never to get on your bad side. She looked straight ahead. You're already on it. Jason blinked. Wait, what? Brooklyn smirked faintly. You're Madison's brother. Jason groaned. Ah, hell. Brooklyn's phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. She opened it while stopped at a red light. This one was shorter. Much shorter. Just 4 words. But they made her heart stop. Your father is alive. Brooklyn slammed the brakes so hard the car screeched. Jason grabbed the dashboard. Whoa! What the? Brooklyn turned the phone toward him slowly. Jason read the message. His face went pale. Brooklyn whispered. If Ethan's lying. Jason nodded slowly. Then he's dead. Brooklyn's voice was colder than the night air. And if he's telling the truth. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. Then someone owes me 10 years of answers. The traffic light turned green. Brooklyn pressed the gas. And somewhere across Los Angeles, Ethan Hayes had no idea that the woman he betrayed was about to tear his entire world apart. Los Angeles at midnight had a strange energy. The daytime glamour faded away, leaving behind neon reflections on wet asphalt, food trucks parked under flickering streetlights, and the constant hum of traffic moving through the veins of the city. Brooklyn drove like someone chasing a ghost. Her black Mustang cut through the empty lanes of Sunset Boulevard, the engine growling every time she pressed harder on the gas. Jason sat in the passenger seat, gripping the door handle. "Brooklyn," he said carefully, "you might want to slow down a little." He didn't. The speedometer pushed past 80. Her mind was racing even faster. Her father. Alive. The words from Ethan's text kept repeating in her head like a broken record. Your father is alive. 10 years of grief. 10 years of believing she had buried him. And now suddenly, Jason broke the silence. You believe him? Brooklyn's eyes stayed locked on the road. I don't know. That's not very convincing. Brooklyn exhaled slowly. Ethan lies. A lot. Jason nodded. Fair point. Brooklyn tightened her grip on the steering wheel. But he wouldn't lie about something like that unless he wanted me to come see him. Jason glanced at her. So you think this is bait? Brooklyn's lips tightened. Exactly. Jason leaned back. Well, congratulations. Brooklyn frowned slightly. For what? Jason smirked. You're taking the bait. Brooklyn finally slowed as they turned into Santa Monica. The ocean air drifted through the open windows. Palm trees lined the streets, their shadows stretching across the pavement under yellow streetlights. Brooklyn pulled the car into a quiet apartment complex. Jason looked around. This Ethan's place. Brooklyn nodded. Yeah. The building was a modern glass and concrete structure 3 blocks from the beach. It had been their dream apartment once. The place they planned to move into together. Brooklyn stepped out of the car. Jason followed. You sure you want to do this? Brooklyn didn't answer. She walked straight toward the entrance. Jason sighed. Okay, we're doing this. Inside, the lobby was quiet. The night concierge glanced up from his desk. Evening. Brooklyn nodded slightly. She had been here dozens of times before. Ethan's apartment was on the 4th floor. They stepped into the elevator. Jason leaned against the wall. You want me to stay out here while you two talk? Brooklyn shook her head. No. Jason raised an eyebrow. You planning to throw something? Brooklyn looked at him calmly. Probably. Jason grinned. Good. I'd hate to miss it. The elevator dinged. 4th floor. Brooklyn stepped out. Her heart started beating faster. Apartment 4B. The door she had once walked through with grocery bags and laughing conversations. The door where Ethan used to greet her with a kiss. Now it looked like the entrance to enemy territory. Brooklyn knocked. Silence. Jason folded his arms. Maybe he's not home. Brooklyn knocked again. Harder. Footsteps inside. The lock clicked. The door opened. Ethan Hayes stood there. He looked exactly like Brooklyn remembered. Dark hair. Blue eyes. But tonight he looked exhausted. And nervous. Brooklyn, he said quietly. Jason stepped into view behind her. Ethan sighed. And Jason. Brooklyn crossed her arms. You invited me. Ethan stepped aside. Come in. The apartment smelled like coffee and stress. Papers covered the kitchen counter. A laptop glowed on the dining table. Jason looked around. Man, this place looks like a crime scene. Ethan ignored the comment. His eyes stayed on Brooklyn. You got my messages. Brooklyn nodded. Yeah. Silence hung heavy between them. Finally she said. You have about 30 seconds to explain why you destroyed my life tonight. Ethan rubbed his face. Brooklyn, it's not that simple. She laughed. Oh really? Because from my perspective it's pretty damn simple. Jason leaned against the counter quietly watching. Brooklyn continued. You cheated on me with my best friend. Ethan opened his mouth. You lied to both of us. He closed it again. And then you proposed to her. Her voice hardened. At my favorite rooftop bar. Jason whistled softly. Yeah man, that's rough. Ethan shot him a glare. Brooklyn stepped closer. So let's skip the excuses. Her eyes burned with anger. You said my father is alive. Ethan hesitated. Jason straightened. The room suddenly felt colder. Brooklyn repeated slowly. Was that a lie too? Ethan shook his head. No. Brooklyn felt the ground tilt slightly. You're sure? Ethan nodded. I've seen him. Jason muttered. Holy shit. Brooklyn's voice trembled. Where? Ethan hesitated again. Brooklyn slammed her hand on the table. Where? Ethan flinched. In San Diego. The words echoed in the quiet apartment. Brooklyn blinked. San Diego. Ethan nodded. There's a private medical facility there. Jason frowned. What kind of facility? Ethan looked uncomfortable. The kind that hides people. Brooklyn felt a chill crawl up her spine. What do you mean hides people? Ethan sighed. It's technically a rehabilitation center. Jason scoffed. Technically. Ethan looked at Brooklyn. Your father's been there for years. Brooklyn's mind struggled to process the information. That's impossible. Ethan shook his head slowly. I thought so too. Brooklyn whispered. How did you find him? Ethan hesitated. Jason folded his arms. Yeah. That part I'm curious about. Ethan finally said. I wasn't looking for your dad. Brooklyn frowned. Then who were you looking for? Ethan looked at Jason. Then back at Brooklyn. Your friend Madison. The room went silent. Jason's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me. Brooklyn stared at Ethan. What does Madison have to do with this? Ethan leaned against the table. Everything. Brooklyn shook her head slowly. You're going to need to start explaining things from the beginning. Ethan nodded. Okay. He took a deep breath. 6 months ago your dad's name showed up in a financial investigation connected to the Morales Development Group. Jason stiffened. That's my father's company. Ethan nodded. Exactly. Brooklyn looked between them. So what does that have to do with Madison? Ethan hesitated. Brooklyn's patience snapped. Ethan. He looked directly at her. Madison's the one who reported the financial irregularities. Jason froze. What? Ethan nodded. She's been secretly cooperating with federal investigators. Jason's voice dropped dangerously low. You're telling me my sister is investigating our father? Ethan nodded slowly. Yes. Brooklyn felt dizzy. So Madison. Her voice trailed off. Ethan finished the sentence. Is trying to expose a massive corporate fraud scheme. Jason laughed bitterly. That explains a lot. Brooklyn frowned. Like what? Jason rubbed his forehead. Like why she suddenly started asking questions about company accounts. Ethan nodded. She found something big. Brooklyn whispered. My father. Ethan nodded again. Your dad was the original whistleblower. Brooklyn's heart pounded. So he didn't die. Ethan shook his head. He was placed in protective custody after the fire. Jason stared at him. You're saying the fire was staged? Ethan nodded. Yes. Brooklyn felt tears sting her eyes. For 10 years she had believed she lost her father. But the truth was even more complicated. He had been hidden away, protected, or imprisoned. Jason spoke quietly. If Madison is working with the feds. He looked at Ethan. Then why the hell did you propose to her tonight? Ethan hesitated. Brooklyn narrowed her eyes. Yes, Ethan. Her voice was ice. Why? Ethan looked uncomfortable. Because the investigation is about to explode. Jason frowned. And Ethan looked at Brooklyn. Someone inside the company found out. Brooklyn felt a chill. You think someone's going to try to stop Madison? Ethan nodded slowly. Exactly. Jason crossed his arms. So marrying her protects her how? Ethan sighed. Because once the engagement becomes public, it creates attention. Brooklyn frowned. I still don't follow. Ethan looked at her seriously. People don't kill someone whose wedding is trending all over social media. Jason blinked. That's actually kind of smart. Brooklyn stared at Ethan. So you used me. Ethan's expression softened. I was trying to protect Madison. Brooklyn's voice shook. You humiliated me in front of 100 people. Ethan looked guilty. I know. Brooklyn's eyes burned. But here's the problem, Ethan. He swallowed. What? Brooklyn stepped closer. You should have trusted me. Ethan looked confused. Brooklyn's voice dropped. Because now. She smiled slightly. That wedding you're trying so hard to protect. Jason's grin slowly returned. Oh boy. Brooklyn finished the sentence. I'm about to turn it into the most explosive event Los Angeles has ever seen. Ethan's eyes widened. Brooklyn. She raised a hand. No. Her voice was calm, cold, controlled. You don't get to decide how this ends. Jason pushed away from the counter. So what's the move? Brooklyn looked at both of them. The wedding is in 3 weeks, right? Ethan nodded slowly. Yes. Brooklyn smiled. Perfect. Jason laughed. I like where this is going. Brooklyn walked toward the door. But first. She turned back to Ethan. We're going to San Diego. Ethan frowned. Why? Brooklyn's eyes hardened. Because if my father is alive. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I want to hear the truth from him. Jason nodded slowly. Fair enough. But as Brooklyn opened the apartment door, Ethan said something that made all three of them freeze. There's one problem. Brooklyn turned. What? Ethan swallowed. Your father escaped the facility yesterday. Silence filled the room. Brooklyn's stomach dropped. Escaped? Ethan nodded. Yes. Jason frowned. Where would he go? Ethan looked directly at Brooklyn. That's the scary part. Brooklyn felt a chill run down her spine. Why? Ethan's voice dropped. Because the last person he tried to contact. He paused. Brooklyn's heart pounded. Who? Ethan said quietly. You. Brooklyn's phone buzzed again. New message. Unknown number. She opened it slowly. 3 words appeared on the screen. They're watching you. Brooklyn looked up. Her heart racing. Ethan. What? She turned the phone toward him. And then another message appeared. Asterisk asterisk. Don't trust Madison. Brooklyn felt the room spin. Jason whispered. Okay. Now this just got real. And somewhere in the shadows of Los Angeles, someone was already planning how to make sure Madison's wedding day would never happen. Los Angeles looked different when you knew someone might be watching you. Brooklyn noticed it immediately. The same street she had driven through 1,000 times now felt like a maze of shadows and hidden eyes. Every parked car looked suspicious. Every pedestrian seemed like a potential spy. Her Mustang rolled slowly through downtown traffic while neon lights flickered across the windshield. Jason sat beside her, unusually quiet for once. Ethan was in the back seat, staring out the window. Nobody had spoken for nearly 10 minutes. The text message from the unknown number still burned in Brooklyn's mind. They're watching you. Then the second message. Don't trust Madison. Brooklyn tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Finally Jason broke the silence. All right, he muttered. This is officially the weirdest night of my life. Brooklyn let out a quiet breath. Same. Jason glanced at her. So let me recap. He raised a finger. Your supposedly dead father is alive. Another finger. He escaped some secret medical facility yesterday. Another. And now someone's texting you like we're in a damn spy movie. Brooklyn nodded slightly. Sounds about right. Jason leaned back. Yeah. I'm gonna need a drink after this. Ethan spoke quietly from the back seat. We don't have time for drinks. Jason glanced over his shoulder. Relax, Romeo. I was kidding. Brooklyn's phone buzzed again. The three of them froze. Brooklyn looked down slowly. Another message. Same unknown number. If you want answers, come alone. A second message appeared seconds later. Dock 47. Long Beach Harbor. Jason frowned. Oh hell no. Brooklyn stared at the message. Jason continued immediately. This is the part in every movie where the main character gets kidnapped. Ethan leaned forward. Let me see. Brooklyn handed him the phone. He studied the screen. Then he looked up. This might actually be your father. Jason scoffed. Or it's someone setting a trap. Brooklyn's heart pounded. Dock 47. Long Beach Harbor was about 30 minutes away. Her mind raced. If it was her father, this could be the only chance she had to see him. But if it was a trap, Jason spoke firmly. You're not going alone. Brooklyn sighed. He literally said come alone. Jason shrugged. Yeah, well, whoever sent that message doesn't know me. Ethan nodded. He's right. Brooklyn looked at them both. You guys realize if this really is my father? Her voice softened. I need to see him. Jason's tone softened too. I know. He paused. But that doesn't mean we walk into a setup blind. Ethan nodded. Jason's right. Brooklyn took a deep breath. Fine. Jason smirked. Great. He pointed ahead. Take the 710 freeway south. Brooklyn turned the car toward the highway. The city lights slowly faded as they drove farther toward the industrial port district. Cargo cranes towered like metal giants against the night sky. Ships sat in the harbor, their lights reflecting on dark water. Brooklyn's stomach tightened. This place felt isolated, dangerous, perfect for a meeting nobody wanted seen. Jason checked his watch. Dock 47 should be up ahead. Brooklyn slowed the car. The roads grew emptier. Finally they saw it. A rusted sign beside a chain-link fence. Dock 47. Brooklyn parked the car behind a stack of shipping containers. The ocean air smelled like salt and diesel. Wind rattled loose metal somewhere nearby. Jason cracked his knuckles. All right. He looked at Brooklyn. You ready? She nodded slowly. Ethan opened the back door. I'll stay near the car. Jason frowned. Why? Ethan shrugged. If someone's watching, 3 people approaching together will look suspicious. Jason thought about it. Fair point. Brooklyn stepped out of the car. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the docks. Jason stayed a few steps behind. The wooden planks creaked under their shoes. Water slapped gently against the pilings below. Brooklyn scanned the darkness. Hello. Her voice echoed across the harbor. No answer. Jason whispered. This is exactly how horror movies start. Brooklyn ignored him. She walked farther down the dock. Then suddenly, a figure stepped out from behind a stack of fishing crates. Brooklyn froze. The man was older. Gray hair. Wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap. For a moment, Brooklyn couldn't breathe. Her voice barely worked. Dad! The man stepped into the light. And Brooklyn's world stopped. It was him. Older. More tired. But unmistakably her father. Daniel Carter. Brooklyn felt tears fill her eyes instantly. Dad! He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. Brooklyn. His voice cracked. Jason whispered behind her. Holy shit. Brooklyn ran forward. She wrapped her arms around her father. For a moment neither of them spoke. 10 years of lost time collapsed into one silent hug. Daniel finally pulled back. He looked at her face carefully. You're grown up. Brooklyn laughed through tears. I'm 31. He shook his head slowly. I missed everything. Brooklyn wiped her eyes. Why? Her voice trembled. Why didn't you come back? Daniel's expression darkened. I couldn't. Brooklyn frowned. What do you mean? He glanced around nervously. They would have killed you. Jason stepped forward slightly. They who? Daniel looked at him. And you are? Jason shrugged. Jason Morales. Daniel's eyes widened. Morales. Jason nodded. My father owns Morales Development. Daniel's face hardened instantly. Then you shouldn't be here. Jason frowned. Why? Daniel looked at Brooklyn urgently. You have to leave Los Angeles. Brooklyn blinked. What? Daniel grabbed her shoulders. Tonight. Brooklyn shook her head. No. Daniel's voice rose. You don't understand how dangerous this is. Brooklyn pulled back. Then explain it. Daniel hesitated. His eyes were full of fear. Jason crossed his arms. I'm guessing this is about the financial scam. Daniel looked at him sharply. You know about that. Jason nodded. Some of it. Daniel sighed. Then you know your father isn't the real mastermind. Jason frowned. What? Brooklyn felt her heart skip. Daniel looked directly at her. The person behind everything. He paused. Brooklyn's voice dropped. Who? Daniel whispered a name. And Brooklyn felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Madison. Silence crashed over the dock. Jason laughed in disbelief. That's impossible. Daniel shook his head. She's been controlling the operation for years. Brooklyn stared at him. My best friend. Daniel nodded grimly. She used your relationship with Ethan to get closer to company records. Jason shook his head. No. Madison hates Dad's business. Daniel looked at him sadly. That's what she wanted you to think. Brooklyn felt sick. Then why is she cooperating with federal investigators? Daniel's voice turned cold. Because she's feeding them fake information. Jason went pale. You're saying my sister is manipulating the entire investigation? Daniel nodded. Yes. Brooklyn whispered. But why? Daniel's answer came quietly. Because she plans to destroy the Morales empire. And take everything for herself. Jason stared at the water. Jesus. Brooklyn felt her head spinning. Everything she believed about Madison was collapsing. The friend she trusted for 12 years might actually be the villain. But before Brooklyn could say anything, a loud metallic click echoed behind them. Everyone turned. Several dark figures stepped out from behind the shipping containers. Men in black tactical gear. Guns raised. Jason cursed. Oh hell! One of the men spoke into a radio. Target confirmed. Daniel's face went pale. They found us. Brooklyn's heart raced. Who are they? Daniel whispered. Madison's security team. Jason blinked. Since when does my sister have a private army? The men started moving closer. Brooklyn's pulse thundered. Ethan suddenly appeared from behind the containers near the car. Brooklyn! One of the armed men swung his gun toward him. Jason muttered. This night just keeps getting better. Daniel grabbed Brooklyn's arm. We have to run. Brooklyn nodded. Jason. Jason was already moving. Way ahead of you. The group sprinted down the dock. Gunshots cracked through the night. Wood splintered near their feet. Brooklyn's heart hammered as they ran toward the parking area. Ethan jumped into the driver's seat of the Mustang. "Get in." Brooklyn dove into the passenger seat. Jason and Daniel climbed into the back. Ethan slammed the gas. The Mustang roared forward. Behind them, the armed men shouted and jumped into SUVs. Jason looked through the rear window. "Yep," he sighed. "We're being chased." Brooklyn turned to her father. "Dad, tell me one thing." He looked at her. "What?" Brooklyn's voice was steady now. Cold. Focused. "Is Madison planning to go through with the wedding?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes." Brooklyn stared at the road ahead. Then a slow smile spread across her face. Jason noticed it immediately. "Oh no," Brooklyn whispered. "Perfect," Jason groaned. "I know that smile." Ethan glanced at her. "What are you thinking?" Brooklyn looked at them all. "If Madison thinks she's the smartest person in the room." Her eyes hardened. "Then we're going to let her think that." Jason sighed. "And then?" Brooklyn's voice dropped. "Then we destroy her." Daniel looked worried. "Brooklyn, she's dangerous." Brooklyn nodded. "I know." The city lights of Los Angeles appeared again on the horizon. Bright. Alive. Waiting. Brooklyn whispered. "And her wedding day." Jason leaned forward. "Yeah." Brooklyn smiled. "Is going to be the day the truth explodes." But none of them noticed the black SUV following them from a distance. And inside that SUV, Madison Clark watched the Mustang through binoculars. Her lips curled into a slow smile. Then she spoke quietly to the driver. "Let them run." The driver nodded. Madison looked back toward the city. Because she already knew something Brooklyn didn't. The wedding was never meant to happen. It was meant to be a trap. The morning of the wedding arrived with a deceptive calm. Los Angeles woke slowly under a pale golden sunrise, the sky painted with soft streaks of orange over the Pacific Ocean. Palm trees swayed gently along the coastline, and the air carried that familiar California mix of ocean salt and warm asphalt. It was the kind of beautiful morning that made people believe nothing bad could happen. Brooklyn Carter knew better. She stood on the balcony of a small hotel room overlooking Santa Monica Beach, staring at the horizon as waves rolled onto the sand below. Behind her, the room was cluttered with papers, laptops, and coffee cups. Evidence. Documents. Bank transfers. Every piece of the puzzle they had spent the last 48 hours assembling. Jason Morales leaned against the wall, flipping through a thick folder. "Okay," he said slowly. "If this plan goes wrong, we're probably all going to jail." Brooklyn didn't turn around. "It won't go wrong." Jason smirked slightly. "That's exactly what people say before things go wrong." Across the room, Ethan sat at the table typing rapidly on his laptop. His voice was calm but tense. "Federal investigators confirmed it this morning." Brooklyn turned. "What did they say?" Ethan looked up. "They're already monitoring the wedding." Jason blinked. "Wait. The FBI is coming to the ceremony." Ethan nodded. "Undercover." Jason let out a long whistle. "Well, damn. That just made this whole thing way more interesting." Brooklyn crossed the room and looked down at the documents spread across the table. Financial records. Offshore accounts. Hidden corporate ownership. Every trail led to one name. Madison Clark. Brooklyn stared at it. Her best friend of 12 years. The girl who had shared dorm rooms with her in college. The girl who had cried on her shoulder after breakups. The girl who had laughed beside her at countless parties. The girl who was now orchestrating one of the biggest corporate fraud schemes in California. And tonight, she was getting married. Jason glanced at Brooklyn. "You sure you're ready for this?" Brooklyn met his gaze. Her voice was steady. "I've been ready since the moment she lied to my face." Ethan stood up. "There's still something we don't know." Brooklyn frowned. "What?" Ethan looked serious. Why she did it? Jason shrugged. Money. Ethan shook his head. There's easier ways to steal money than running a decade-long financial conspiracy. Brooklyn thought about that. He was right. Madison had always been ambitious. But this level of manipulation felt personal. Brooklyn looked at her father, Daniel Carter, who sat quietly near the window. Dad. Daniel looked up. You worked with the Morales company back then. He nodded slowly. Yes. Brooklyn's eyes narrowed. Did Madison know about the investigation when she was younger? Daniel hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes. Jason frowned. She would have been, 16? Daniel sighed. She overheard conversations between her father and some investors. Brooklyn's stomach tightened. What kind of conversations? Daniel looked uncomfortable. Conversations about ruining my career. Jason straightened. What? Daniel nodded. Your father blamed me for exposing the fraud. Jason looked stunned. So he planned the fire. Daniel shook his head slowly. No. Everyone went silent. Brooklyn whispered. Then who did? Daniel looked at her. Madison. The room froze. Jason shook his head immediately. That's impossible. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. She hired someone. Brooklyn felt cold all over. She tried to kill you. Daniel nodded. The fire was meant to silence me before I could testify. Jason's voice dropped. She was 16. Daniel sighed. She was already brilliant. And already ruthless. Brooklyn's chest felt tight. All those years. All those memories. Had Madison been manipulating everything from the start? Jason rubbed his temples. Okay, that's terrifying. Brooklyn stood slowly. Which means tonight. Her voice hardened. She finally gets exposed. Jason checked his watch. The ceremony starts in 2 hours. Brooklyn grabbed her jacket. Then let's get ready. The wedding venue was a luxury beachfront resort in Malibu. White chairs lined a grassy cliff overlooking the ocean. Rows of flowers framed the aisle. A massive floral arch stood at the altar where the ceremony would take place. It looked like something straight out of a celebrity wedding magazine. Guests began arriving around sunset. Luxury cars rolled into the circular driveway. Men in tailored suits. Women in elegant dresses. Cameras flashing. Champagne flowing. The engagement had already gone viral online. People were calling it one of the most glamorous weddings of the year. Brooklyn stood across the street watching the scene unfold. Jason stood beside her. Man. Madison really went all out. Brooklyn nodded slowly. Yeah. Ethan adjusted his tie. Remember the plan. Brooklyn looked at him. Trust me. Her voice was calm. Tonight everything ends. Across the venue, Madison Clark stood inside the bridal suite looking flawless. Her white wedding dress shimmered under the soft lighting. Her hair flowed in elegant waves. To everyone watching, she looked like the perfect bride. But her eyes held something darker. Her assistant walked in nervously. Ms. Clark, the guests are all seated. Madison smiled slightly. Good. The assistant hesitated. Your fiancé is waiting at the altar. Madison glanced at the mirror. Perfect. She turned toward the door. Then paused. Did Brooklyn arrive? The assistant nodded nervously. Yes. Madison smiled. Excellent. Because Madison already knew something nobody else did. Brooklyn's plan was exactly what Madison wanted. The ceremony began as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Golden light stretched across the ocean. Guests sat quietly as the music started. Ethan stood at the altar beside the officiant. Jason sat in the front row pretending to look bored. Brooklyn stood near the back hidden among the guests. And scattered throughout the crowd. Several undercover federal agents waited quietly. The music changed. Everyone stood. Madison appeared at the top of the aisle. Gasps filled the crowd. She walked gracefully toward the altar. Her smile was calm, confident, untouchable. Brooklyn watched every step. Jason leaned over slightly. Moment of truth. Madison reached the altar. She looked at Ethan. Then the officiant began speaking. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." "Stop." The voice cut through the ceremony like thunder. Everyone turned. Brooklyn stepped forward. Guests murmured in confusion. Madison tilted her head slightly, almost amused. Brooklyn walked down the aisle slowly. Jason muttered under his breath. "Here we go." Brooklyn reached the front. She looked directly at Madison. "Hey!" Madison smiled politely. "Brooklyn." Brooklyn crossed her arms. "You really thought you'd get away with it?" The crowd began whispering loudly. Madison's expression stayed calm. "I'm not sure what you mean." Brooklyn laughed softly. "Oh, come on." She turned toward the crowd. "You guys might want to hear this." Jason stood up. Ethan stepped away from the altar. Brooklyn raised her voice. "For 10 years Madison Clark has been running a financial fraud scheme using her father's company." Gasps filled the crowd. Madison's smile didn't move. Brooklyn continued. "She framed investors, manipulated federal investigations, and attempted murder." The crowd erupted. Madison sighed slightly. "Brooklyn." Her voice was soft. "You shouldn't have done that." Brooklyn frowned. "Done what?" Madison snapped her fingers. Suddenly, several armed security guards surrounded the altar. The guests screamed. Jason whispered, That's not good." Madison stepped closer to Brooklyn. "You walked right into my trap." Brooklyn's eyes narrowed. "What trap?" Madison smiled. "The one where everyone who knows the truth disappears." The guards raised their weapons. Guests began running. Chaos exploded across the venue. But Madison's smile faded suddenly. Because a voice behind her said calmly, "Federal agents. Nobody move." Dozens of agents stepped forward. Badges flashed. Guns raised. The guards froze. Madison's expression finally cracked. Jason grinned. Plot twist. The lead agent stepped toward Madison. "Madison Clark, you are under arrest for financial fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." Madison looked at Brooklyn slowly. For the first time, her confidence was gone. "You did all this?" Brooklyn nodded. "Yeah." Madison laughed quietly. "You think this is over?" Brooklyn tilted her head. "It is for you." Agents placed handcuffs on Madison. As they led her away, she leaned close to Brooklyn and whispered, "You're wrong about one thing." Brooklyn frowned. "What?" Madison smiled faintly. "I wasn't the mastermind." Brooklyn felt a chill. "What do you mean?" But Madison only laughed as agents took her away. Jason walked over. "Well." He looked around at the destroyed wedding. Best wedding ever. Brooklyn stared toward the ocean. Something still felt unfinished. Then Ethan walked up beside her. "Brooklyn." She looked at him. "What?" Ethan sighed. "There's something else." Brooklyn frowned. "What now?" Ethan hesitated. Madison wasn't lying. Brooklyn's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Ethan's voice dropped. "There's someone above her." Jason frowned. "Who?" Ethan looked toward the police cars, then back at Brooklyn. "The person who started the entire operation." Brooklyn whispered. "Who?" Ethan answered quietly. "Your father." Brooklyn's world stopped. She turned slowly toward the police vehicles. Her father stood near them, talking calmly with federal agents. And suddenly Brooklyn realized something terrifying. Maybe Madison wasn't the villain. Maybe she had just arrested the wrong person.